letting people know that like just because somebody's dealing with PTSD doesn't make them a bad person, doesn't mean they're going to be violent against you or anything like that. It's just they're struggling, and most of these people are struggling in silence.
Just being able to have a conversation, like you said, it's kind of like self-therapy.
Totally.
I'm not a therapist, but just having a conversation with someone, sometimes that helps. Finding out that he was killed, our own unit started taking fire from the village that we just came out of, and that was the worst, because the grief, the sadness, everything that I was feeling turned to straight pure rage and anger. I didn't care who they were. I didn't care, man, woman, child. I didn't care. I wanted them all dead.
Welcome back to the Tim Teaches Podcast. I'm your host, Tim McCoy. Today I have the absolute pleasure of welcoming Scott DeLuzio. Scott is a U.S. Army veteran, author of Surviving Son, and the host of the Drive On podcast. Scott, thanks for joining me, man. Appreciate you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really glad to be here, and appreciate you taking the time to let me share my story and hopefully help some folks out along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. So this time you're kind of on the other side of the podcast. You are a podcast host. How'd you get into podcasting?
Yeah, so I started my podcast now, almost 6 years ago, 5.5 or so years ago. And I started it because the guys that I served with overseas in Afghanistan, we all made it home, and that was wonderful. Obviously, that's the desired outcome. But we got home and these guys started taking their lives. And one obviously is too many, but when that number starts ticking up and gets larger and larger, I started thinking to myself, what the hell's going on? And why is this happening? And what can I do to help? I didn't want to just sit around waiting for another phone call to say that another friend is gone, for God knows, what the reasons were. But regardless, I didn't want that to happen. So I was like, what can I do to not only help the folks out that I served with, but I was starting to recognize that this was an issue that was military-wide. This was, It wasn't just Army infantry guys that, I served with. It was, people from all branches of the service. Didn't matter what their job was in the service. It's affecting everybody. And so how do I reach as many people as possible? When I was like, well, a podcast is free for the users to listen to. And so I can certainly do that and put that out there. That'll be able to reach just about anybody. The problem was I didn't have a clue what I was doing. That was the biggest obstacle, because I didn't know any of the technology. Yeah. What kind of equipment did you need? And any of that, I didn't know any of that stuff.
Yeah.
And actually, the very first episode that I put out sounded so awful. I listened to it afterwards, and it was so garbled, and like it just the sound quality was terrible. I actually re-released it that first episode, because I was like, I can't leave this out there. It was that bad. I was like, I had to fix that. So, but yeah, the ultimate goal of the show, the Drive On podcast, is really to help those people who are struggling. Oftentimes they're struggling alone. Sometimes they have families and whatnot, but they don't always let their families in on the struggles that they may be having. And I want to be able to help those people. And I thought a podcast was a great way to do it, because you can listen to a podcast on your way to work in the car. You can listen to it while you're at the gym, or, while you're cutting the grass or whatever. You can listen to a podcast anywhere, pop on some headphones, and nobody has to know what you're listening to. So it's not like, hey, I gotta leave work for a little bit so I can go to my therapy session, and you gotta tell your boss why it is that you're leaving. And it's like, well, that might be something you don't want to do. And so, I mean, hopefully a podcast can help. And, I'm not saying that it's going to replace a therapy session necessarily, but it's going to open your eyes to other possibilities that might be out there that might be able to help in whatever situation you might find yourself in.
Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of one of the reasons, I started doing this as well. As, I was in law enforcement and in the military, and suffered from a bunch of PTSD and myself, and really didn't have an outlet. I actually started, I haven't released it, but me and my wife did our first podcast together in studio, because everything I've done has been on Zoom and everything. But we got into talking about it, and it's like, when she met me, I already had PTSD, but she wasn't even really aware of it, and
Sure.
all of a sudden, I'm looking out the windows all the time. And she's like, what the hell is wrong with this guy? And, so, bringing awareness to it and, letting people know that, like, just because somebody's dealing with PTSD doesn't make them a bad person, doesn't mean they're going to be violent against you or anything like that. It's just they're struggling, and most of these people are struggling in silence, and they don't let people know that they're struggling, and they bury it with alcohol or drugs or other things, and it's terrible. And a lot of people, you don't even realize they're struggling until they take their life, and it's awful. And most people are like, man, he seemed fine, and
that's right. Yeah.
Yep. So, that's crazy. Did you have any experience with radio or technology or anything like that? Or you just were like, man, I just want to do this?
I mean, I've had experience with technology. My former career path that I was on, I was building websites and doing technology related things that way, but it really didn't have much to do with podcasting. It helped me in the sense that I built my own website for it. So that was helpful that I had that kind of background. And I had been a guest on other people's shows. So I knew, okay, you need a camera, you need a microphone.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know anything about the quality of these things. I just had this cheap, like $30 microphone that,
I just upgraded.
I know it was just this little thing. It had like this little arm, and it was like this little crappy microphone, and it sounded awful. It sounded like you were talking in a trash can. Like it was just like echoey, and it was awful. And so I upgraded to something else, which I just recently, within the last year or so, upgraded to what I have now. But I had been using the same one all along.
What are you using now? I'm trying to see it there. Sure. There you go. Yep. And so, back then I didn't really know much about it. And I've always had this kind of, I'll figure it out kind of attitude towards things. When I was in college, my father was starting up his business, and I asked him, is there anything I could do to help you with your business? He was starting off on his own, and I figured, is there some tasks that I could take off your plate that I could do? And I don't know, I was a college kid. I didn't really have many skills that would be useful. And so he was like, well, I need a website, build me a website. And this was in the early 2000s. Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know how to build a website. I've never done that before. He goes, well, go buy a book. And this is how old we are, right?
Buy a book.
Go buy a book and figure it out. It wasn't like, go Google it. That wasn't a thing back then. It was go buy a book and figure it out. And so I was like, okay, well, I guess I'll do it. So I bought the book, and I figured it out, and I built the website. And it was, by today's standards, it was absolute garbage. But I was super proud of the fact that I was able to build something. Like, I had a blank screen in front of me, and I built it from nothing to something. And it all worked. It was functional, like links. You click on something, it brings you where you thought. Like, it just worked. And I was like, this is amazing. And so that kind of planted the seed for me for future career development. Like I was like, what? I love doing this. So let me just keep doing this and make some money doing it. And so that's what I had done for part of my career. But as far as technology, as far as the podcasting goes, no, I really didn't have a clue.
Yeah. Just jumped into it.
Yeah.
I kind of, started out as a kid. My dad did a little bit of radio stuff, but he always had the broadcast voice and would joke around with us, and that kind of stuff. And, I had a karaoke machine when I was a little kid, and I would always record the radio and talk over it and do the intros and stuff. But then, for 35 years, I never really did anything else. But it's always been in the back of my mind. And, we're kind of talking about PTSD and mental health and stuff. And I was dealing with a lot of that. And if you've seen any of my episodes or anything like that, I used psychedelics to help me recover from that. And it changed my life. But part of that whole process was like, man, you got to follow your dreams, do what you want to do. And it's always been in the back of my mind, like, do a podcast. You want to just do it. And so I finally pulled the trigger, man.
And one of the things that you're saying, I think, to your point, which is, I think, spot on, is that you have to find what is your purpose?
Mhm.
What is your thing that makes you tick? What is it that you get up out of bed in the morning and you're all fired up, you're ready to go, and you want to go tackle whatever this thing is? So many people, they get these jobs that they hate,
Mhm.
working a nine to five job or whatever the job is that they absolutely hate. They get out of bed in the morning and they're like, I wish I could just stay in bed all day and not go do this job because it's terrible. I hate it. My boss sucks. I don't even care about the work that I do and all this. It's money that puts food on the table. That's really the only reason why they're working these jobs. And so outside of a paycheck, you really have no purpose
Yep.
and meaning, and it doesn't give you that passion that energizes you and gets you fueled up and ready to go. And I think people need to figure out what that is. And I know it's hard sometimes, especially people who are suffering with PTSD, depression, anxiety, other things like that. It's hard to figure that stuff out. Um, it Full disclosure, it's hard for me to figure it out too.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
I still struggle with that type of stuff. And and yet here I am telling people this is what you're supposed to do, but I know it's what I'm supposed to do. It's just sometimes it takes time
Yeah.
to figure it out. And it's okay to take time, I think,
It's kind of like self therapy for me, and probably for you, talking to other people, hearing about it, and you
Mhm.
hammer home like, hey man, you got to get help. You got to work out. You got to eat clean. You got to take care of yourself. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, damn, I got to do all those things I'm saying, and
Right,
I try,
right.
but it's, you telling other people to do it, you're kind of setting the standard for yourself. And for me, it's been beneficial, helping.
Yeah, and I think even just having the conversations, like you and I are talking right now,
Yeah.
and it, having a conversation like this is beneficial because it's two guys just talking about life, about whatever it is that we whatever rabbit hole we end up going down, we're going to start talking about it, and that's beneficial to have some sort of connection. I know we're recording virtually right now, and
Yeah.
obviously anyone who's watching the video of this are going to be able to tell we're in two different rooms right now. So like
Yeah.
that's no secret right there.
Yeah.
We're recording virtually, but still we're having a conversation. And there's so many people who just don't talk to people.
Yeah.
They don't have even these types of conversations. They do work from home and they, maybe they use Slack or some other tool that they can just like send a message to someone and they type it away and that's the message goes out, or email or whatever. And they don't actually physically talk to anybody,
Yeah.
all day long. And that develops isolation and that leads to more depression and PTSD, and all these things just get worse when you're in isolation like that. So just being able to have a conversation, like you said, it's kind of like self-therapy.
Totally.
I'm not a therapist, but just having a conversation with someone, sometimes that helps. And so
Yeah.
like, why not keep doing it?
And I think most of the therapists out there are in it for their own self therapy. From what I understand, man, everybody I've talked to, just about, not all of them, but they're like, I'm like, wait a minute, am I the therapist or are you the therapist?
Yeah. My wife, she started her master's and decided it wasn't for her, but in going to be a therapist. And, she's like, everybody in class has like so many issues. And she's like, I don't know if I can deal with this. I don't know if this is the job for me. It turned out it wasn't. So
Yeah.
it was kind of a good thing, but it was like, yeah, I think a lot of them, they're carrying their own baggage and they're,
Yep.
in a way I think it's like, I don't want other people to suffer the way I suffered. And
Yeah.
so that's why I do what I do. And that's why I do what I do with the podcast too.
Mhm.
I don't want people to have to make the same mistakes that I made and suffer the way I suffered and all that kind of stuff. So, why not help people?
So, yeah, let's kind of jump into your story a little bit, and for the people
Sure.
who don't know you. So you're a military veteran, served in Afghanistan, and wrote a book about it. And I don't want to steal your thunder at all. I like people to tell their own stories. So if you
Sure.
could just kind of share a little bit about that, and then kind of what led to, obviously you had some PTSD and depression and all that crap like everybody deals with. So
Mhm.
I just want to hear from you.
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, like you said, I did serve in the Army. I was in the Army National Guard for about 6 years. I was infantryman. Um, and I forget if we mentioned it or not, but my younger brother, he also served in the Army National Guard, also an infantryman. We were in two different states that
Okay.
we served in, but both of our units fell under the same brigade,
Wow.
which is kind of interesting. But um, what ended up happening is in 2010, we were deployed to Afghanistan, and it was a brigade-wide deployment. So he and I both were deployed at the same time. We're in different locations,
Mhm.
probably 80 or 90 miles apart, somewhere around there. But we're both there at the same time. Um, and when I talk to people sometimes about it, they get the Saving Private Ryan mindset. It's like, I didn't think you could serve at the
Yeah,
same
yeah,
time, that
yeah,
type of thing. But that's not true.
yeah.
As a matter of fact, the company I served in had several sets of brothers who were in the same company.
Wow.
And so that was um, just dispelled that myth right there. Is like
Mhm.
they do that quite often, especially in the National Guard. If you think about it, kind of makes sense because they're state-based,
Yeah,
organizations, and if two brothers are living in the same state and they both have that call to
yeah,
serve, they're going to
yeah,
go and serve, and they're probably going to be in the same unit because
yeah,
especially like infantry, there's not too many infantry units.
yeah,
For
yeah,
how many infantry units does Connecticut really need? Yes, it's a small
yeah,
state.
yeah.
But anyways, um, so we both were over in Afghanistan, and uh, we were there. I think we both we got there in like early February. I think he got there late February of 2010, and towards the end of the summer, like around August, um, I was out on these missions. We were doing joint missions with the Afghan army, and we were going out to villages. We were flying out on helicopters at night, going out to villages, raiding through the villages during the day, and packing up and leaving, later on that day. And then next village, we just hit village after village and just go in kind of chasing after the Taliban. Whenever we get intel that there is Taliban in a certain area, we just go fly out and try to
Chase them.
take them out. Yeah,
Yeah.
just get them. Um, and so I was out of touch with family for quite some time. Like, where we were earlier in the deployment, I was able to call home, at least, once or twice a week or so. I'd have that ability to either make a call or send an email, that type of thing. Where we were doing these missions, there was very little opportunity to do that. So I hadn't been in touch with anybody at home for quite some time. And on one of these missions, I got a call on the radio from, it was basically the commanding officer looking for me, which anyone who's served in the military knows that if a commanding officer, and I was an E5,
Yeah,
so I was not like high on the totem pole as far as the rank goes. And so anyone who's served in the military knows that if the commanding officer is looking directly for you, either you did something extraordinarily good or you screwed up.
Really
And
messed up.
something
Yeah.
really bad.
Yeah.
And I was like, look, man, I'm thinking about the day that was going on. I was like, I really didn't do anything extraordinary. I'm not getting any medals for
Yeah,
my efforts today. Like that was kind of out of the, so I'm like, what did I screw up?
Yeah.
How bad did I screw up that, he's calling for me? And, I started checking all my guys' equipment, making sure they didn't lose anything. I'm
Yeah,
checking
everybody got
serial
their
numbers.
weapon. Yeah.
Everything, like
Yeah.
their sites, everything. I'm checking all their stuff. I'm like, all right, well, I got to go face some music. So I went and I linked up with him. He was up at the top of the mountain. That was this village that we were in was at the bottom of the mountain. So I had to go climb up the mountain, and I linked up with him, and he's like, yeah, come over here, take a knee, and I'm like, man, this is gonna be bad. I was just bracing for impact, right? And he's like, yeah, your brother was his unit got ambushed and he got hit. And up until that point, I had not even considered the fact that my brother could be seriously injured or killed. That was just something I put out of my mind. I don't know if it was just ignorance or whatever. Maybe it was just my own self-preservation to allow myself to do my job and not have to worry about him. But it was one of those things where it's like bad things happen to other people. It's not going to happen to me. It's not going to happen to my brother. Up until that point, I never even considered it. And so he told me that he got hit. And so in my mind, I'm like, okay, well, can I get to him to be there for, moral support? Maybe he needs blood, something like that, whatever it was that I could do to help him. I was like, yeah, what can we do to get me off this mountain to go be with him? And the commanding officer looked at me like I was crazy. And he's like, no, you don't understand. He's been killed.
Oh.
And that was like a punch in the gut. Like literally, if you've ever been punched in the gut and you get that feeling where it's like you have trouble even catching your breath, that was what I felt. It was like he actually physically punched me. He didn't, but that's what it felt like. And a lot of people, when they have near-death experiences, their life flashes before their eyes. They see their childhood and their, all these other things that it just flashes before their eyes. And I kind of had the opposite, where I flash forward and I was thinking of all the things that I normally would have been able to do with my brother, that, celebrating holidays, going to his wedding, his firstborn child, and being able to celebrate all those things with him. I was seeing all those things without him there. I was just seeing what life was going to be like, and it was just this empty void, and I felt like it was just this miserable experience. And to make matters worse, about 10 or 15 minutes, 15, 20 minutes or so after finding out that he was killed, our own unit started taking fire from the village that we just came out of. And that was the worst, because the grief, the sadness, everything that I was feeling turned to straight pure rage and anger. I wanted nothing but the worst for every single person who was an Afghan in that. I didn't care who they were. If they were the Afghan soldiers that we were with, our interpreters, the people from that village. I didn't care, man, woman, child. I didn't care. I wanted them all dead. That was the level of rage. It was almost a homicidal rage. I didn't actually kill anyone doing this, but I wanted to. I think the only thing holding me back was I was married, I had a wife and a child at home, and my parents had just received, or were about to receive, notice that one of their kids were killed. And I didn't want them to get a second knock on the door saying that I was killed too, because I did something stupid like that. That was the only thing reining me in. Fortunately, I had those things keeping me kind of balanced. And then as kind of the clarity started coming back to me, I realized, shit, I still got people I have to lead. I'm responsible for these guys' lives too. So it's not just me that's going to get screwed up if I do something stupid. It's them too. And so I was like, okay, what do I do with this grief, this sadness, this anger, the rage that I had? And I was like, I just got to find a spot and stuff it down, mentally, and just put it away for now, and go do my job. Most satisfying thing was when we called in air support and there's this building out in the distance and it just got obliterated. And I was like, hell yeah.
Yeah.
Man, that was so satisfying, just seeing the bombs come down and just what used to be a building, it was now just a puff of smoke. And that was so satisfying to me.
Retribution.
Yeah, exactly. And so that was obviously the worst day of my life, dealing with all of that. But it didn't get any easier when I came back home. Having family and friends around, that was good. But that, only lasts for a little while. Eventually the people who were there constantly, up until my brother's funeral, they were there, and it was wonderful. Don't get me wrong. I'm not knocking any of these people, but eventually, they have their own lives. They got to go back to their own lives. They got to go to work. They got to, take care of their kids, and they got to go do all these things. They can't be there forever. And eventually you got to figure it all out on your own. And I had stuffed that grief down so far I didn't know how to pull it back out. And the PTSD, the grief, the survivor's guilt, the anger, all of those things were just there. And I didn't know what to do with any of them. I was your typical guy who was, especially, military guys, the kind of alpha male mentality is like, I'll figure this out. I don't need to go to therapy. They had those mandatory mental health sessions, like the screening, when you get back from overseas. And I lied through my teeth through those things. Like, you sleeping well? Yep. 8 hours every night. How much you drinking? Oh, barely anything.
Nothing.
Nothing.
Yeah.
It was like lied through my teeth. No, reality was I could barely get to sleep. And when I did get to sleep, I couldn't stay asleep. The visions, the kind of flashbacks that I would have, it was keeping me awake, and I was drinking to pass out, basically drinking enough to pass out. So I would, I'd be able to actually get some sleep, and then I'd wake up, I'd be hungover, and I'd be cranky and miserable and agitated and all that. So I'd drink a ton of coffee and energy drinks and that kind of type of stuff.
Uppers and downers, buddy.
Uppers and downers, and just it was like this roller coaster for me, right? And then got to the point where I was doing that so much later in the day that the caffeine was affecting my sleep, and that then I needed more alcohol to counteract the caffeine, and it was just like this terrible cycle. And I was an asshole to just about everybody. And I realized just how bad I was at one point, and I was thinking about, like, okay, who am I? This is not the same person that left for Afghanistan. The person who was happy, had healthy relationships with people, who barely yelled at anything. And here I was yelling at my kid, who was, a year or two old at this point, and I'm yelling at him for stupid, like, kid stuff, like things he's supposed to do because he's a kid, right? He makes a mess. Well, duh, like, he's a kid. That's what they do. They're messy. And I'm yelling, and not just yelling at him, like, I'm yelling like a drill sergeant yelling at a new recruit. That level of yelling, that's not okay with a little kid. And I started seeing my son kind of mimicking when he would be frustrated, he would be mimicking some of the mannerisms and behaviors that I was doing. Like, I would do this thing where I'd, like, grit my teeth when I got really angry. And I saw him, he would get mad at something or frustrated, and he would be gritting his teeth, and he'd have this real serious, angry look on his face. I'm like, holy crap, I'm doing this to this kid. Like, I can't keep doing that. He deserves way better.
How was your wife during this? Because she knew the person that left and then the person that came back.
Yeah, I know. Obviously it had to be disappointing for her it's like, I wasn't the same, right? But she was patient. We're still together. And I thank God for that, because who knows where I would be if I didn't have that motivation to get better for her, for my son, for the people in my life who mattered. But she was really patient with me. She recognized early on that I wasn't the same person. And so she didn't thrust upon me a lot of demands and things like that. My son was born about a month or so before I left for Afghanistan. So I didn't really know how to be a father. I mean, I had changed a few diapers or so, but, like, I was in deployment mode. Like, I'm getting ready to leave. And that's where my head was at. My head was not, I should have been in being a new father. This was my first son. I had never experienced being a father before. That's where my mind should have been, but it wasn't. It was on deployment and Afghanistan, which also is where my mind should have been. I can't be in two places at once, you know, like, so it was a really difficult time. And I came back, and the house that I knew my place before. I knew what was expected of me as the husband in this relationship. But I didn't know what was expected of me as the father. in this relationship? How do we do this parenting thing? I didn't know how to be a parent. I was very much absent for pretty much all of my son's life up until that point when I came back home. Outside of, a month or so, I didn't really know how to be a parent, and I didn't know how I fit into that whole equation. And that for me was tremendously difficult to figure that out. But my wife gave me time. She didn't say, bark orders at me, do this, do that, do, whatever.
Yeah.
She allowed me to kind of find my place in the household. And that was really beneficial for me. And if it wasn't for her support during this time, I don't know where I would be. If she had, just had enough with my crap, which I wouldn't have blamed her because I was a miserable person to be around. And she decided to leave, I wouldn't have blamed her.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, looking back at it, I don't see why she didn't.
Check in with her and ask her.
I know.
Hey, why didn't you leave me, man?
Like,
what's wrong with you?
I kind of don't want to plant that seed either.
No, yeah, I get it.
No, but seriously, what she did was she was patient. She had allowed me to not only take care of myself, which needed to be done, but allowed me to find my place in the household as a father with a new son, with all those challenges and responsibilities that come along with it. And it was really helpful, that the way she did that.
How'd your parents handle it? Obviously, losing a child is completely devastating.
Yeah, that's something no parent should ever have to deal with.
Yeah.
I don't care who you are. You shouldn't have to bury your own children. But I think as expected, it was rough. I mean, still rough, for them. They and me, them and me, we miss him every day. I do little things that probably nobody else even notices. I do little things every day just to remember him. And I don't know if my parents are the same way, if they do that, or they're trying to move on. I don't know. But I know, for them, it's, days like, his birthday or, the anniversary of his death. Those are difficult, but they tried to do things to make a bad situation better. We hosted a golf tournament for the first few years after he was killed, around the anniversary of his death. And we did that, and we raised a bunch of money, and we provide scholarships for, high school kids going into college. We donate money to other military charities. And so we used the bad situation, and we're trying to turn it into something good. And that was, largely, my parents, kind of starting that off. And, I helped out with them for a little while with all that. And, we haven't done the golf tournament in a number of years now, but it was one of those things where we were doing it to not only keep his memory alive, but also to, celebrate his life. He was not the type of person. He was a very happy, funny type of person. He would not want people to be moping around and being sad and all that.
Yeah.
He loved to play golf, so we hosted a golf
Nice.
tournament. That was kind of a nice thing to do. And we're donating the money to things that he would also support, other military charities. Obviously, he would be supportive of that. Kids in high school, and we actually did a thing with the Little League in town that provided scholarships for Little League players as well. That eventually, when they got to college age, they'd be able to cash out that money and use it for whatever, tuition, books, all that kind of stuff. So
who joined the military first, you or him?
He did, actually. He was my younger brother, and he's the one who kind of cleared the path for me to do it. And so it was kind of interesting because we grew up in a patriotic family, brought up respecting the military, the police, anybody basically who put on a uniform to go out there and help and protect and serve other people, we were looked at them as those are the real superheroes out there. They, it's people, they idolize, sports icons and, athletes and things like that. Those people didn't even matter as far as I was concerned. It was the military, the police, firefighters, EMTs, doctors, nurses, all those kind of people. Those are the people in my mind that those are the heroes. And then all of a sudden my brother becomes one of these people. And he went from the kid that I'd beat up in the backyard, and we'd be, doing what brothers do. And all of a sudden he turned into literally, in my eyes, like a superhero, and I'm super proud of him when he joined. And one of my biggest regrets is I never told him how proud of him I was, which, looking back now, I know there's nothing I could do about that, but
he knows.
I'll
let you in on a little bit.
I know that too, but I guess the reason why I bring that up is like, if there's something that you want to tell somebody, you're proud of them, or you love them, or whatever it is, just freaking say it, man. Just go and tell them. It doesn't have to be weird. Just say, man, dude, I'm proud of you, man. That was awesome that you did something. Whatever it is.
I'm shooting random texts to my nieces and nephews once in a while. I did it yesterday at like 5:30 in the morning, and he didn't even respond. I was just like, hey, man, I'm just thinking about you. I love you. This kid's gone through some stuff, and he doesn't have to respond, but at least he's getting that message, and it is very important to reach out and let people know, hey, man, you love them, and people need to hear that, a little bit. I lost my brother as well after coming back from Iraq. I was in Iraq in 2003, 2004. My brother wasn't in the military, and he was my older brother, but I was dealing with PTSD coming back from Iraq, and my brother was my rock, and he was the guy that I was leaning on hard to help me, and then he was killed in a car accident, and his birthday's on Monday, this Monday. And so you were talking about those anniversaries and remembering them and stuff, but yeah, man, it went from bad to worse for me real quick, And so losing a brother, brutal, worst thing ever, those, it sucks, but you don't forget them, and you try to keep their memory alive. And
that's right.
So I saw that, and I was like, I mean, I didn't, your story, it really resonated with me, and it sucks to lose.
It does suck. I mean,
lose your brother, man.
I really don't know if there's any other way to put it. It sucks.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just terrible. And it doesn't matter, whether it's military combat, death or car accident or something like that. Any kind of sudden, any death like that of a loved one is going to suck, but any sudden one where it's unexpected, they're young, they got their whole lives ahead of them.
Yeah.
And it's like, wait a minute, what?
Yeah. And it's just out of the blue.
Yeah.
You don't, 1 minute they're there with you. And I remember I was laying in bed at, I had a weird epiphany about my brother, which was kind of odd. I woke up in a panic. I was already waking up in a panic almost every night anyway. So this wasn't new, but the panic was, your brother's dead. And I'm like, that's a fucking weird thing to, excuse my language. That's a weird thing to think, and this is probably 1 a.m, and I just kind of wrote it off as I'm crazy, because I was kind of crazy. And and then a couple hours later, my phone started buzzing next to my bed, and looked at it. It's my dad. I'm like, what the hell is he calling me at 5 a.m. for, and got that news, but he didn't come out with it either. He just beating around the bush. Hey, where's your brother live? Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, what's the repo man coming for his car or something? Cause he was having a hard time financially at the time, and my dad actually said, and I was like, oh, thank God it's not something worse, and then broke the news. But it was like,
wow,
you talked about getting punched in the stomach. That's exactly it.
It's interesting that you talked about that epiphany that you had, that you kind of woke up and in a panic almost. So that mission that I was on, that I was talking about, that before my finding out that my brother was killed. So we flew in at night, got off the helicopters at night, so pitch black. Um, if you're lucky if you had moonlight, but like that's pretty much all you had in your night vision. But as the sun was coming up, we were still on top of this mountain, and I had this thought come to me, and it was like someone was telling me it's better if my brother dies than me, because I'm married, I have a child, I need to be there for them. And it's better because he was engaged, but he wasn't married. He didn't have any kids. So it's better that way. And I remember I was sick to my stomach thinking, I was like, why would I think something so disgusting like that? Why?
Yeah.
Who does that? And it didn't really click until a few weeks or months afterwards. I was thinking about it. I was like, holy shit. I had that
he's
thought
saying,
that day.
That message. I guarantee it,
Well, and the thing was, when I thought that, it was before he was killed. It was the day he was killed, but it was still before
he was killed.
A few hours before.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know what makes that type of thing happen. Is there some connection that you have between each other or whatever? But like, there's something that
I promise you there is. I mean, I can go down a rabbit hole when it comes to this stuff, and I have. You've interviewed Jason Pike, who I had on, and I was going to kind of talk about him for a second. I mean, military guy, lieutenant colonel, but has had some struggles in his own life, but is a fighter and just a badass dude. And so I got my healing through psychedelics, through ayahuasca. And, I did it in a legal place down in Costa Rica, and it was the most incredible experience of my life. And I've done it multiple times because if once is good, 3 times is better. But, I got some serious healing with my brother, with my PTSD. But the experiences I had, like, receiving those, I call them downloads, and that's kind of what they call them, like this information you're given from a higher power, the universe, your brother who's moved on but is very much still around, I promise you. I received some of that stuff, and Jason has been struggling, and so we talked about ayahuasca. Just I was telling him my experience, and so he just out of the blue, about a month after we had that conversation, was like, hey, tell me about that ayahuasca place, with his accent and everything. Sure, and I told him, and he so we did a pre-recorded interview before he went down there, and then he was sending me clips. He just got back last week, and so we're going to do a follow-up interview, and I guess he had some really good success with it as well. So but you get some information, and it's incredible stuff. Not for everybody, but I tried the therapy, and I tried the boatloads of medication that the VA gives me, and none of it worked. And that was kind of my last straw, because I got a little bit better with the PTSD, just managing it on my own and just finding out, working out, not being married to the person I was married to, and finding a new wife. And that was years, throughout years, things got better, but I was still struggling. And then I got into law enforcement and had some really bad experiences with that, and losing some kids and stuff like that. And so it just exacerbated that for me. And I went kind of right back into the whole PTSD thing, And so that was kind of my last resort, and it worked for me. So I know mental health, there's all kinds of avenues to help you. Some find religion, some find medication or therapy. But for me, it was that. And it really did change my life. And that's what got me to do this whole podcast. Really, it was like, you got to do what you're called to do. And I felt called to help other people for a long time, as sounds like you have too,
Yeah. And I think there's healing in helping other people too.
Mm-hmm.
That service to other people, when you see that the work that you're doing, paid or unpaid, doesn't matter what it is that you do. When you see that
Unpaid.
you're making it, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
When you see that the work that you're doing is having a positive impact on somebody else's life, that is a huge boost to your self-esteem, to your sense of self-worth. Like, if there was nobody in the world who relied on you, then who the hell cares about anything, right? But if there's somebody, even if it's just one person, that's like, hey, my life is better because of what it is that you do.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's like, you're mentoring them, or you may not even realize you're mentoring them. You might just be talking to them because you are friends or something, and you're sharing, experiences or whatever. That person is like, hey, my life is better off because you're in it. And that there's just a boost to your own sense of self-worth when you have somebody like that in your life, I think.
Yeah. It's been a fun journey. I've gotten some messages and talked to people, and they're like, yeah, I listen to your podcast, and it's helped me. And I'm like, really, you listen to people you don't even expect, so it's incredible stuff. How long? I mean, you've been doing it for 6 years now. Are you monetizing it? Are you making money off of this? Are you just doing it for fun?
I had a sponsor about a year and a half ago or so that paid me a little bit of money for it, which was great. For that time period. Then the sponsor went away, and I realized, like, I wasn't really a big fan of doing the whole ads in the, cutting the ads into the middle of the episode, and recording the ads. To me, it just felt like forced and not really great production value and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like it took away from the episode. So, I'm happy to, obviously, if someone wants to pay me to do my podcast,
helps.
Sure, no problem. But I'm not like actively looking for sponsors to do like ads on the air. I'll post shit to social media all day. I don't care. You send me some stuff. You want me to post it and talk about it? Yeah, no problem. I'll do that all day on social media. Just in the episodes itself, it's like they're there for a reason. They're not there for money making.
For sure.
Really, the podcast hosting platform that I use, they have like dynamic ads that they can put in at the beginning of the episode, and it's like the first 10 or 15 seconds there's an ad, and I figured, it makes me a little bit of money.
For sure.
People can hit the fast forward button pretty easily, and it's not that big a deal. So I use those. That's about like the extent of the monetization on that. If other opportunities come up down the line, I'm happy to explore them. Don't get me wrong. I'm not like anti money.
Yeah. Me neither. Yeah. If you're listening, I'm all about money.
I'm all about it too. I love it. It's just, I also don't want to take away from the value of the episode either. And I have a lot of great guests that come on the show, sharing a lot of great stories and messages and stuff. And, I just don't want to take away from those messages. So I do a little bit of monetization, but it's really, I mean, I haven't broken even yet, if that's what the question is.
No, I don't think I will. I just bought 3 of these microphones.
That's going to be a while.
Yeah. My wife was like, I don't necessarily divulge all the expenses. I'm like, it's fine. We'll cover it. It'll work itself
wash out.
Yeah. Eventually in 20 years.
Right.
No, it's fun. So are you doing any kind of coaching? You got your book, or what else how else are you helping people?
These are the primary things right now. The podcast is a big thing. You did mention the book, which is Surviving Son.
Oh,
there it is. Nope, that's the back of it. There it is.
There you go. Nice.
So Surviving Son is the book. That would have been a whole lot better if I was smooth with it, but
I'll edit it for you, buddy.
No worries. No, you can keep all that in, because
keep it real.
I'm a klutz, and people should know that. So, anyways, so Surviving Son is the book. I basically wrote about my experiences joining the military, going to Afghanistan, losing my brother coming home, dealing with all the crap I had to deal with, and what got me to where I am now. And so, give it a read if that's
Absolutely.
you're inclined to. There's an audiobook, there's an ebook,
Oh, right
there's
on.
paperback, hardcover, paperback, hardcover, whatever version you want, it's out there. So
I'm an audiobook kind of a guy.
and if
like
you could
that.
stand listen to my voice, I'm the one who did the
Oh,
narration
perfect.
for it. So but by all means, check that out. So yeah, so all that. And the other thing I have going on now too is I am just recently, as of the beginning of this year, I was asked to be a fellow for the Global War on Terror Memorial Foundation. And
Okay.
basically my role with that is to help raise awareness of this memorial, which will be built in Washington, D.C., the mall area near the Lincoln Memorial, Vietnam Memorial area, is where the location for it's going to be. And it basically, that's kind of my role, is just to help raise awareness and tell people about it, and where it's going to be, what it's there for. It's there to be inclusive of all people who are involved in the global war on terror, and that includes
There's a lot.
I mean, it includes a lot. It's not just Afghanistan and Iraq. There's Syria. There's the Africa deployments that were taking place. There's people all over the world. The Philippines. People all over the world that were involved. It's not just for the military veterans. It's for the CIA and the FBI and the other agencies that are out there. The base that we were on, we had this separate area that we weren't allowed to go onto, and we called it the alphabet soup area. It's for all those guys who are there, from all these agencies that we don't know about, and if we did, they'd have to kill us. Those types of people as well. Who normally they don't get those type of memorials and recognition. It's for the Gold Star families, the folks who've lost a loved one while serving over there. It's literally, it's all inclusive of everybody who was involved in the global war on terrorism. And the thing that drew me to this memorial is I was in Washington, D.C. a few years ago. We were actually invited to the White House by President Trump during his first term. And every year around Memorial Day, he had a Gold Star family event. And he invited 50 Gold Star families to the White House. And it was an absolutely incredible experience. They rolled out the red carpet. They treated us as if we were royalty. Just really an amazing experience. And we essentially had the run of the White House. We were able to go into all these different rooms and everything. It was super, super cool. And there were military officers there who were in each room who was able to explain different things about, there's like, dishes and plates and stuff from George Washington and all these things in the White House. And it was like just incredible. Right. But anyways, I was in Washington for this event, and decided to go for a run in the morning. And I went for a run around the mall area. Did a loop around like the Vietnam Memorial, went up to the Lincoln Memorial, all the war memorials. I went through all of them, went up to the Capitol and around, all around that area. And as I was stopping at each of these memorials and checking them out, I was like, where the hell is ours? For our generation. And I was like, I really hope that we don't have to wait decades for a memorial like this to be built. And little did I know, I didn't even know this at the time. It was already in the works that they were working on putting this memorial together, and it's a ton of work to do. And these guys that I've partnered up with, who've been running this organization, they've been doing the work, getting the congressional approvals and all the laws that had to be passed and everything that in order for them to get a plot of land to build. It was just a ton of work, and they've gotten past that piece, and now we're kind of in the design phase, and they haven't even released a public design yet, but there's just so much work involved, and just seeing just the dedication and the passion of the people who are involved in this is just incredible. And I know it's going to be a great memorial when it's eventually built.
Man, that's incredible. It's well deserved by those guys who have fought and the guys who have lost their lives. So good for you for stepping up and helping out with that. And I appreciate it. I appreciate your service. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing a little bit of your journey. And man, you're crushing it. Keep podcasting. Keep spreading the good word, man.
All right, will do. Thanks so much.
Appreciate you.